Good evening, everyone. My name is Toby, call signs Kilo Oscar 4 Yankee Mike Sierra. I was asked by a couple people to do a hot wash on my two recent SOTA activations, more or less from the perspective of as a new or future SOTA operator, what did I do to plan, pack equipment, and then prepare for the activation and the summit for Summit to the Air. I plan what this video is going to entail is obviously I'm doing the intro now. We're going to go to my planning phase, and I'm going to show you on my screen recorder what I used to plan and select the summits I went to. And we're going to talk about my hike itself for both events, the activation of the summit itself for the radio, and then end with any lessons learned, any key takeaways, and then how I'm going to better prepare for the future. Yep. So my background, active duty, military for 12 years. Went to the basic Air Force survival school. I've been hiking for a little bit, nothing too crazy. A couple overnight camps, but no Eagle Scout, no Eagle Scout. And as for my radio operator background, I'm not even a full year as a general license. So building the ship as I drive it. I'm going to end of this intro and then proceed into the screen recording of planning and considerations for SOTA. Hey everyone, it's Toby, KO4YMS. I want to talk to y'all through how I started planning to go on my first Summit of the Air, what resources, what websites I used, etc., etc. So at the top here, you'll see the various different resources I use. If you're getting into SOTA, you definitely need to go to this Summits in the Air page, create an account. There they have all some intros to what you need to look at, and then here's some additional links. There's different little subset websites of Summits of the Air. So the database website, you go here. This is actually where you go to submit your logs, look at your results, things like that. So plenty of tools here, view results. See my results, my activator log. So those are my two summits. And again, this is where you go to upload your logs once you come off the summit to get credit for you and the chase activators. This SOTL.AS website, it's a pretty unique tool, pretty awesome tool myself. I love the map part of this because it's very user intuitive, and it has pretty interesting, easy to follow tools and data that you can rapidly source. Another one, I'm still learning about this one, but SOTAMap, it's another subset website you can use. Again, you go here. Hey, if you know what region you're going to be in, so in Nevada, it's Whiskey 7 November. In Clark County, so everyone gets confused about the labeling criteria for the summits. So it kind of goes by county, and then kind of zooms you in. And then where am I at? Like, hey, I know I'm going to be 057 Turtlehead, and then goes from there. So I also use Google Maps. Google Maps is the easiest way to determine, hey, how do you get there when you're driving? And then CalTopo, which we'll talk more about here in a second. So how did I select, as a new SOTA operator, how did I select my summits? So there's a podcast I've been listening to called Ham Radio, All Portable Discussion Zone. Sorry for the voice here. Sorry for the sinuses. Dry air has got my sinuses messed up a little bit. So yeah, Ham Radio, All Portable Discussion Zone. That's a podcast I listened to, and they had mentioned, hey, when you're going on your first SOTA activation, you need to go activate summits that have been frequented multiple times. So when you look at these summits here around the Las Vegas area where I'm been doing training, you look at this summit here has been activated twice. Sunrise Mountain, it's okay, but not great, right? That's not Sunrise, but so let's look at Frenchman. I looked at this one. I was not opposed to doing this one, especially the relative proximity to the city. to get 2 meter VHF contacts on single sideband. This one had been activated 9 times, but what turned me off to this one was this guy here. He did a write-up. This guy, the Long Green Tunnel, does a lot of compilation on his summits. And one of the things he had mentioned in the past is one of these summits, let me see. One of these actually has potential for interference because there's a tower. Okay, well, I'm going to not get y'all sick here. But anyways, I chose not to do this one. And then again, never activated a summit before. I wanted to pick a summit that was within cell range of my cell phone, just in case. You never know, just in case something happens. I wanted to be close proximity, something that's been activated multiple times, and wasn't too challenging of a summit. So you look at Lone Mountain here, 3,343 feet. When you start comparing Wilson's Ridge at 8,400, you start like, all right, this is doable. I'm pretty confident in my ham radio setup. And the other part for me was like, is it easy to navigate, and where can I find parking? So when I looked at my first summit, I kind of focused in on this one at Lone Mountain. So as I'm going through my planning process, hey, I think I found the summit I want to look at. Now I got to figure out the logistics, like how do I get there? Number one, the biggest thing is where do I park? So this is where Google Maps comes in. So you can either search it here, like you can search it right there. Not the Lone Mountain Park, but you go to Lone Mountain, Las Vegas, it'll take you there. So then you start looking and comparing imagery. When you start looking at these summits for your first SOTA activation, are the trails easily defined in your imagery? Yeah, it's pretty, sorry for the hotel internet speed here, but yeah, very well-worn paths down here at the base, going up the ridge, or going up the mountain, and then there's the peak. And then you start looking like, where do I park? So when you start noticing trailheads, that's where you want to key and focus on. So when you start zooming in here, when you go zoom into the trailhead, you see the line of parked cars. So yeah, so looking at imagery and looking for the trailheads, you can pretty much narrow down where you want to park. So when I go into Google Maps, I save these pins and I label them so I can find them in Google Maps faster and get my Google Map directions direct to the parking. And then as I start, if I need to quickly geo-reference the peak versus where I'm at on the summit, I can quickly do that as well, as long as I'm in cell phone carrier coverage. So that is what I chose for my first summit. Number one, where's parking, where's the elevation, and making sure it's not going to be like some 8,000 foot monstrosity that I'm never going to be able to activate. Another key point, if you're an early bird like I am, get there early, less people on the summit. You also build in more time in the day if you want to stay longer. Or if there's weather coming in the afternoon, you at least had time to get the activation and get off the mountain quickly. Something to be of concern as weather does change. Actually, I don't have it on here yet. Let me see, mountain. There you go. When you are curious about the weather forecast for your specific summit, you can look it up as long as it is recognized on this website and it's high enough. So I'd considered Mount Wilson in this area in Nevada for my first SOTA activation. But when I started deep diving the weather, again, I don't live here. I'm temporarily assigned here for 2 weeks. So when you start looking at the weather here, hey, a max of 25, and then you start looking at these numbers. I don't have the cold weather gear to sustain a consistent summit presence on this high of a mountain. So these are good, understanding weather shifts on the summit very rapidly. So this is why I chose not to go here. Cal Topo. So yeah, let's look at Cal Topo real quick. So when you start looking at CalTopo, it's a free topography software tool that's internet based. There's also a website. I know there's a SOTA.io group that one of those groups is doing a free CalTopo academics and training. I don't know which IO group it's in, but yeah, they offer free. They're doing Zoom classes on it and posting the classes to YouTube. So something definitely to consider if you want to use this tool. So let me see. Again. So yeah, so when I zoom into Lone Mountain here on the CalTopo website, again, these red dashes indicate well-worn trails. So when I compare CalTopo against the imagery for Lone Mountain, you start seeing the trails and how they correlate, which is a good sign. You're verifying essentially the different routes and means to get up to the summit. Also understanding the activation zone of each summit is anywhere within this first close contour line. So you don't have to be at the Noble BS grid, but you still have to be somewhere on the summit, which is important because you just hike this summit. You don't want to be in people's way. Again, you want to be, you're going to have a presence there. I promise you, just being there. But get there, set up your equipment, not in the way of people so they can get their photos, ask their questions, and then be on their way and not create and draw any more attention to yourself than necessary. So yes, CalTopo is a great tool. One thing I do like here on the right-hand side real quick, you can select cell coverage to see what coverage you have and then select your carrier. And like I said, as predicted, being so close to the city, I was in cell coverage the entire time, and that actually was true to statement. With CalTopo real quick, again, different layers, the imagery is about the same as Google Maps. You can use these older or different types of underlays to figure out and look at like past 10 trends, tendencies, etc. So what did I look at for my second summit? Again, I wanted to find a summit that had a decent number of activations, but wasn't like too outside the norm. So I started looking at Blue Diamond Hill. Yeah, not too bad. Red Benchmark. One of these is near a firearms range, and I didn't want to have to deal with that in regards to the amount of reports coming from gunshots into the background. So I decided just to just ignore that in general. So I went to Turtlehead Mountain instead. So when you look at it, 13 activations. You start reading these, and these are articles posted by activators with pictures, and then you can zoom in and you can pull this data. So, and the beauty is with CalTopo, one of the benefits I didn't realize until I was actually researching it is, if you look up the La Madre Wilderness Area boundary map, this CalTopo has it. So you can verify for all you POTA activators. You can look here and see, well, does the mountain I want to ascend to lie within the boundary of a park? Well, this is what I use to verify that. As you look at this green boundary here, Turtlehead is right there in the boundary. And again, here's your main trail. Here's your trail to get you up the mountain. It even gives you distance. So now the question becomes, hey, this is awesome. Where do I park? Well, let me go back to my Google Maps. Hey, what do you know? It showed up in Google Maps. So we'll let the internet figure itself out here. So yeah, Turtlehead Mountain, there it is. You can't really see the terrain through the imagery based on the satellite's angle when it shot it. But you start looking at it and you start like, oh man, where do I park? How do I really need to hike 5 miles before I even get to the base of the summit? Well, not really. If you follow the main roads here and you start looking at the imagery and like, oh, there's where I can park. So now you have a park. There's a distinguished trail. Again, for a second time photo activator, I'm not wanting to get lost in the desert here. So what there's very visible trails that I can get to the base of the summit. And while it looks long based on the amount of distance here, by the amount of times I'm zooming in, it's really not that far of a distance in regards to walking up here. And we'll talk about that later, but this is more or less just showing the tools and then evaluating as a new SOTA operator, are these trails feasible to get up to the mountain? And then what is my personal limitations? What's the weather like? All those other considerations. So, yeah. And then when I check the cell coverage again, Verizon, what do I got? Okay, pretty decent carrier coverage there. But I still took a photo. And again, if you want to use CalTopo for free, you have all these different things you can use. All these planning tools you can use to help plan your excursion to get out to the summit and activate. So we talked SOTA map. We talked this SOT map. Like I said, this is probably my favorite tool so far because I can rapidly assess all the summits in the area to determine where do I want to go, where do I everything else that are factors here. This is the main page. Yeah, obviously you're going to need to create an account. This is where you go to upload your logs and view your data. Okay, spots and alerts. So again, that ham radio all portable discussion zone podcast recommended for 3 to 4 days prior to you hitting your summit. You want to add an alert. So an alert, you fill your call sign, all the summit IDs, when you're going to go activate. Your ATA got to be in Zulu time. What modes? Again, pretty standard as you follow through this. And if you don't know what you want to put, look at the templates that are already being executed for spots and alerts and go from there. And then comments like, hey, starting out on 2 meters, then 10, then 20 or 40, or hey, I'm going to be plus or minus 40 minutes to the summit based on whatever environmental conditions change your timing of arrival. So when you put the alerts in, what happens is once it gets to that time, your alerts now become automatic spots. And these are how the hunters find you. So they're the chasers. So while you're activating, they're going to be scanning through here. So if you want to increase the amount of success to get a summon activated, which is 4 contacts, I can't recommend add an alert early so hunters and chasers can find you early, and then set aside time on the frequency to come find you. But this is how I went through all my planning. Again, looking at the weather reports too. You owe that to yourself and your family to make sure you're checking out the weather as well. Make sure you're not stranded. And then again, adjusting your equipment based on the current weather. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. And I'm going to end this portion of the debrief. Good evening, everyone. Toby here again. So I want to talk equipment and maybe some lessons learned applied for that equipment, but I'm going to hit that in another video real quick. So yeah, pack Mystery Ranch Coulee 25 liter pack. Great for just a day trip. Nothing too crazy. Again, awesome pack. Can't recommend it enough. The only downside, I know the price point for Mystery Ranch, it's up there. Understand, I'm sensitive to that. So not everyone can afford a Mystery Ranch backpack, but if you can, I can't recommend them enough. The shoulder yoke area is adjustable in height. The tri-clamshell zipper design enables you to get into the top of the pack as well as the bottom of the pack faster with this zipper that goes all the way down. Plenty of quick attachments, so you can get these. Notice the trekking poles are cinched into there with those loops. Plenty of accessory pockets for clothing items, Nalgene's, etc. The mast here is sitting in another hydration pocket for Nalgene, so plenty of space. I personally, based on my skill level with camping, in the winter, I would not go below a 35 or 30 liter pack, but that's just me. But for each of my summit activations, it was just a down and back. So no problem being able to fit in most of this in my Coulee 25. For those of y'all who are in search of a nice pack, what I recommend for brands, Mystery Ranch is good. It's great. I was issued their stuff with the military. I can't recommend them enough if you have the money. If you don't, that's okay. No big deal. There's brands Osprey, REI Co-op, Eberly Stock, North Face, and I'm trying to think who else. Kelty. Oh, Kelty makes some decent packs as well, and North Face, if I haven't mentioned them already. They make great hiking packs below the price point of Mystery Ranch. And then there's another hunting brand, Coulee, Kiui. They're specifically hunting brand packs. They're a little bit cheaper than Mystery Ranch, but I might pick up their 30-liter just so I can have something a little bit bigger in regards to having a decent, a well-rounded amount of packs that I can source depending on what I'm doing. But yeah, that's enough on packs. Let's see. Someone wanted to see how I pack my Yaesu 891. So with the portable zero side rails there, that's what I use. That's how I packed it closest to my back. My Bioenno 12 amp hour battery. So before everyone gets into the comments, yes, I know. So the 35 feet of RG58 will be replaced. I'm going to go for smaller or shorter and lighter cable. That's already on my to-do list. The 12 amp hour battery here, I'm probably going to replace with a 6 or 9 amp hour. That'll save me between 1 pound or 3/4 of a pound to 1.5 pounds if I cut this in half, or if I cut it down by 3 amp hours. This Pelican case houses the antenna. I was running a Chameleon offset center dipole. Again, when you start looking with all the items in this backpack, it's very easily that cables can get tangled and pulled, and you don't want that. So I put my antenna deliberately, and some other smaller pieces, like some pieces to help connect the antenna to the mast. All those little connectors and bits and stuff went in here, more or less to keep them segmented away from everything else. Let's see what other photos I have. Oh, yeah, so gear layout, essentially. I recommend you pack your pack the night before. That way you know if you're missing something, you don't. You'll find out very quickly the night before if you're missing something. You still get time to go out and run and go get it. If you wait till the morning to pack your stuff, number one, you're already behind. And then you open up you increase the probability that you forget something like a battery or power cable. So going through here, there's what I packed. Obviously, Yaesu FT-60, you want to have a handheld just in case your primary radio dies out. You have a way of, and if you lose cell coverage, you at least have a way to communicate down the mountain. Nalgene. So I had 2 of these, but I'm only showing one in the photo. I go through a lot of water. I know that. So know more about yourself and how you drink water, and have extra water. You never go wrong with too much water. And I also had those rehydration packs. You can buy at any outdoor store. So give yourself a little treat when you get up there. Rehydrate your body. You replace those electrolytes when you get some downtime on the summit. First aid kit while it's not designated purely a first aid kit, having some sort of first aid available on hand, not just for you, but in case you encounter someone injured on the hike up or down, you have the ability to render first aid. My battleboard Kneeboard, this is what I use to help log notes and keep track of who's contacting me in an area where I don't have necessarily a hard surface that's stable. Extra cordage, can never go wrong with extra cordage. There's my radio, beanie, and jacket. So REI beanie, nothing special. And then the Beyond Clothing jacket that I use. It's light enough to pack, but it's not going to be too cumbersome. So just want to reiterate, I did not wear this hiking up and down the mountain. This was purely I'm on the summit, I'm done being active, my body's temperature is going to start going down. And oh, by the way, the temperature is is going down on the summit and the wind's picking up. So you need to have extra layer of clothing that'll help track body heat and keep the wind from breaking through your clothing and your layers. So that's what this is for, and why you should have extra layers of clothing when you hit a summit. Trekking poles. So when I was 21 years old hiking, it'd be a different story. I don't need these things. I always laughed at the older people who had them. But now that I'm over 30, well, these things definitely save my knees. These save your knees going up the mountain because it takes the load off your back. And it also saves you going down the mountain because now you have ways to slow yourself, and especially around loose gravel, loose terrain, reduces the odds that you're going to fall and hurt yourself. Even with these things, going up Turtlehead Summit on Sunday, I still fell a couple times. Again, it's just what it is. You can't help it sometimes, but these things help minimize the amount of times you could fall. Boots. I wanted to hit boots. Again, I nerd out on this stuff. So my brand I'm running is Oboz, O-B-O-Z. The brand I'm really not really important about. The issue with the boots, you want to make sure you're getting something that provides ankle support. So you need the taller boots that cover the ankle at the very minimum. I know there's a lot of places that do hiking shoes with the aggressive texture on the bottom. Those are great for if you're walking a wooden trail with stable terrain. But when you start getting into terrain and summits where it's loose gravel, that's not going to cut it. You're going to roll an ankle or even break one. And if I didn't have these boots on the past 2 days, I definitely would have rolled an ankle. Definitely, if you know you're going to do summits and you know that some of those summits have very loose or uneven terrain, you definitely need boots with ankle support. So getting boots that are tall enough to cover your ankles. And unless you're living in Poland and Germany for 9 to 12 months out of the year, you don't need to spring for the Gore-Tex lined boots. Like, Gore-Tex doesn't breathe. It's more expensive, and you're going to wear them. Even in the wintertime in North Carolina, I would venture to say you don't need Gore-Tex lined boots. Your feet are going to sweat. It's going to cause problems. You're going to have more blisters, more hot spots, and just, unless you're living in Poland in the wintertime, or Alaska, or any of those cold, rainy centric states or nations, you don't need to spring for the Gore-Tex lined boots. Having said that, let's move to hiking pants. So I saw plenty of people going up the mountain in jeans, and I just scratched my head. Again, you hike with what you got, right? But over time, you start to realize if you're going to make this an active hobby, you need to spring for the equipment that'll help make it more comfortable. So again, jeans, denim, those heavy clothing, cotton-based types of material don't breathe and they trap heat. It's not what you want to do when you're already hot from hiking up the mountain. You need material that's lightweight and that breathes well. Additionally, I saved this for last. This is merino wool, quarter zip top. The brand is called Smart Wool. This is not cheap. Merino wool is not cheap by any means. You can get it for different price points. This was in excess of $120 top. However, what this gives me in regards to capability is it allows me to wear a heavy enough layer to where it keeps me warm when I hike up the mountain, but it still enables air to flow through and breathe and dissipate all that heat and moisture coming off my body as I'm hiking up the mountain. I was the biggest skeptic when it comes to merino wool because I couldn't understand why I would pay this much money for something when I could just get by with something else for a lot cheaper. And there are other options that are more financially available. I think you can get the 50-50 nylon or a nylon cotton mix. You can get synthetics, 100% synthetic materials like that Under Armour material. But I wanted to experiment with the merino wool just to see what it does, and I left impressed. I'm going to be buying like one or two more. And don't be fooled when you hear wool. Merino wool does not scratch or cause you to itch like normal wool does. This is a whole new level of material when it comes to maintaining body temperature and not overheating or not getting too cold, and managing the moisture that your body's generating. And I think I hit everything on here. Yeah, the gloves down there in the corner. I didn't wear those up the hike. I used those for later. I used those when I was on the summit. Oh, and the trekking poles. So the other thing with the trekking poles, they're dual use, not just for getting up and down the mountain, but if you're running an antenna like an infed half wave or a dipole, you can't just lay those antenna wires on the ground, right? Number one, it's a potential tripping hazard for bystanders on the summit, and number two, it just doesn't enable good propagation. So you extend these trekking poles out, and now you have a way to keep your antenna ends off the ground and enhance your propagation. So these are not just for old people hiking up and down the mountain trying to save their knees. These also have for SOTA operators up on the summit. You can use these to help keep your wire antennas off the deck. That's all I got, so we'll review lessons learned here in a second. Hey everyone, good evening. Last section of the video. Thanks for everyone who stuck with me so far. Again, if you have questions for what I've shown in the video or any additional requests, just hit me up. I'm in the SOTA Facebook groups. Shoot me an email. I'll put that in below if anyone's interested in it. I wanted to supplement some data I missed in the equipment overlay, equipment pack out video. So the mast is a SOTABEAM Tactical Mini. I didn't cover that. I want to hit that real quick. Yeah, so that battle board, Kneeboard, it's not a cheap piece of kit. There are other options. If you go on Amazon and search Kneeboard, you can find options that are $10 to $20 cheaper. Again, I try to be very sensitive to people's price points, understanding that not everyone's financial status varies. So having more expensive, more cheaper options is always something you got to push for. There was a Packtenna 2040 infed half wave in there just in case. That was my backup antenna in case I couldn't get my dipole up on the Sunday attempt. Saturday it didn't work. Saturday I could not get. And this goes into one of my lessons learned. I'm not great at guying telescoping mast. So when I would set up one end of the dipole and I pull on the other one, it just came tumbling down. So I eventually said, I don't have time for this. So I went and just set up my Packtenna infed half wave and activated the summit and got down the mountain. But on Sunday on Turtlehead Summit, there was a tree. I was able to bungee cord to the tree, my mast, and get the dipole up and running, which worked out great. And then, I didn't hit on that. I touched on merino wool and the benefits of it. The downside with merino wool is it's a very delicate material, so you need to make sure that you follow the washing care instructions. So number one, don't put it in extremely hot water. Number two, don't throw it in, and it needs to be in a gentle wash cycle, and it needs to be either air dried or gentle dry cycle, because you'll ruin the merino wool and all that the money that you spend on it is just pretty much gone. So lessons learned real quick. So up the summit, down the summit. So yeah, I kind of talked some of that into when I was doing the review of the equipment, more or less. Like, yeah, Turtle Summit, that see, also it's only 6,300 feet, but I would consider that a moderate strenuous type of hike. Not because of the distance. It's only 2.3 miles up and 2.3 miles down, but it's the intensity. The terrain really can mess with you if you're not an experienced hiker, or if you never dealt a lot of time in the outdoors, dealing with slick gravel, dealing with that type of loose terrain. It can really mess with you, and it does pose a hazard if you're prone to tripping or anything like that. Lone Mountain was just fine. It's just, I would recommend you get out, like any summit I activate from now on. I already knew I was going to go out and activate early just to avoid the amount of people, and then do my activations and get off the mountain as quickly as I can. Not because of, I mean, and I talked with plenty of people who were curious of what I was doing, and everyone was cordial and had nice questions, and I was being a good steward of the SOTA community. But it's for the sheer fact of I don't want to be trying to set up a random antenna wire with 30 people running back and forth on the summit and creating potential tripping hazards, or just not being a good steward or ambassador to the community. So I wanted to get up there, get my antenna set up, and get off the mountain. So that was kind of my goal there, and no issues. Lessons learned: lighter equipment. I put on my pack the night before Friday night. I was like, "Oh, I got this. This is easy. This pack ain't that heavy." Man, yeah, you get humbled real quick. I intentionally packed lighter from the podcast, ham radio portable discussion. Like, do not, because I got into this using POTA, Parks on the Air. Like, and I love the POTA community. I still activate POTA, but that in that podcast, they were like, you POTA guys, do not pack your Go boxes, your Tough books, and all this other extra crap that you don't need. And I adhered to that. I was like, what is the bare minimum that I thought? Well, my bare minimum is still not enough. I still need to get lighter. So my game plan is to cut my 12 amp hour battery in half and give me a 6 amp hour or a 9 amp hour battery. I'm kind of on the fence because my Yaesu, I'm usually punching 20 to 40 watts or 20 to 30 watts. So I still want to have enough battery. So that's why I'm kind of gravitating towards the 9 amp hour versus the 6 amp hour. And that goes back into the right weight. So what weight are you going to set? Everything's a compromise with this stuff. Hey, if I want to pack a bigger radio, what do I pack less of? Or, hey, if I want to pack something else, everything has a cost benefit analysis. So for me, and there's certain areas you can just shave weight. So like that cable, I think it's 35 feet. I'm going to cut it down to 25 feet. I'm going to order 25 feet of a lighter cable, and that'll cut ounces, if not a pound off. I'm going to cut the battery weight. Keeping the water weight, I'll probably replace that Pelican case with something else that can still organize my antennas, but not like be encumbrant and be that heavy. Additionally, I was posting in a group about what type of topographic GPS enabled apps do y'all use for phones. It seems like Gaia GPS seems to be one of the standards besides the Garmin suite for GPS. So I'll have to go download that. But overall, I had a great time. I would go do it again. It's one thing when you start looking at if you have a love for the outdoors, you like being challenged, you like to try and live a healthy lifestyle as best as you can, and you love ham radio, go do SOTA. I understand the apprehension of getting into it and how to plan it. That's why I did a separate video on just planning how to do SOTA. So definitely go out. Hit me up if you have questions on how to activate in regards. And yeah, and I would also say, I wouldn't say you have to be an expert ham radio operator before you go SOTA, but I would hate to go up the mountain not being an expert and then not getting the activation, right? So, and that's where POTA came in. Hey, if I can activate 10 contacts in a park and be pretty proficient in different frequency spectrums, I'm more confident now going up the mountain and only getting 4 contacts. So I had been POTAing good 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 months before. I was able to test my portable equipment from the comfort of my vehicle or picnic table. I was still being able to test its portability, still setting up the antennas and all this other mess. And then the only thing that I had to do was lighten my equipment, pack a backpack, and then repeat on a summit. So I'm not saying you just go. I'm not saying you have to be an what's the word? Anyways, you don't need to be an expert to get on the summit and activate, but you definitely don't want to just sit up there. If you don't, You want to have your core fundamental. That's what I'm trying to say. You want to have your core fundamentals of understanding how to get radio contacts in a portable environment, portable constraints before you go up to that summit. I'd hate for you to spend 2.5 hours hiking up a mountain exhausted, and then you get up there and no one talks to you because you didn't set up something right, or you don't know what bands activate at the best time of day, or you don't know how to even research that. So definitely have a core foundation of how to use your equipment, how to get contacts before you climb that mountain. But once you do, you get some pretty awesome views. I mean, it's an awesome time. But this is Kilo Oscar 4 Yankee Mike Sierra 73.